The Fantasmagorium show is proud to present Money, Murder, and Minnesota, a retrospective of all things Fargo. Season 5 Fargo, this is where this show becomes a battle of... No, this is last week's. Sorry, I didn't write an intro this week, so... hooray, Fargo. This is where I would praise Juno Temple, except for Juno Temple is not in this episode. But we do get Dave Foley. And quite frankly, and yes, I like to say quite frankly, is Jennifer Jason Leigh is so warming. I think I really like Jennifer Jason Leigh. I think she's one of my favorite people of all time. I am here. I'm Scotty R37. Kat is also welcome and present. And Steve is... What's Steve doing this week?
He's trying to save his bank.
Well, good for him. You know, I wish him the best in that endeavor. This is amazing. I really enjoyed this episode. But before we talk about the show, we're going to talk about something that has absolutely nothing to do with a television show, but a matter of distribution.
Yeah.
Kat, how have you been watching Fargo season 5 thusly?
So the first two episodes I watched on the first two episodes I watched on TV because they weren't available to rent or watch digitally anywhere, and it was obnoxious because for those who don't know, the FX network has more commercials than anything else. The standard for a show that fills up an hour is that you get like a 44-minute episode of TV and 16 minutes of commercials. Really nice flow, goes really well. With Fargo, it's like 42 or 43 minutes and then 27 to 30 minutes of commercials tagged on. But rather than just having the same 3 or 4 commercials and just being a bit longer, they decide to have several more broken up. So it's like you watch a scene, stop, maybe 2 more scenes, stop, scene, stop. And it's like an internet buffering video. You can't get momentum with their shows, and that's what drives me crazy. That's why I only watched the first 2 episodes of season 4 before buying it digitally, and then I figured I'll come back to it and binge it once it's all available, and I forgot about it. With season 5, it was really compelling. We had this show going on, so then I watched episodes 3 and 4 on the Prime Video is where I bought it with a free account, and they usually drop the episodes 5 hours after airtime. Last week, they actually dropped it 2 hours before airtime. I'm like, oh, cool. Here we are, almost 48 hours later, and they still haven't dropped the latest one yet, and nobody else complains about it, but other people who have the same problem but with other shows say that Amazon will respond like with a bot basically saying, we only can release it when the studio releases it to us. And I'm like, well, I could see it's been made available on all these other redemption services, so this sounds like a glitch or something, and who knows if they're gonna catch it or fix it. So because I love this community so much, I spent another $20 buying the season on Vudu.
Well, you're a crazy person.
No, I'm dedicated to the show, and we'd already been advertising it, so I'm not going to pull the rug out from under them at the last.
I do appreciate that. You know what? If you had pulled out on watching tonight's episode, that's such a Scott move. Advertise something for days and then pull out at the last minute.
Which is a reference to something in this episode. Believe it or not. And would you believe, having just watched it until you mentioned it, I didn't even think of the fact that Dot isn't even in this episode. That didn't occur to me while I was watching it because I was so engaged with everything else that was happening.
Well, and like we've talked about this, and it's a well lamented fact of Scotty R37 lore is that I am such a John Hamm fan, but Dot Juno Temple in this show is kind of outshining him. It's one of these things where we did have an entire episode where everybody was like, when Dot was not in a scene, everyone was talking about Dot. It was perfect. I loved it. I missed her. I love the character. There's a bit of heavy hand in this episode. Oh, by the way, spoilers, everybody, for Fargo. Season 5, episode, what is it, 6?
Yes.
We're more than halfway now. So, yeah, no, we're going to spoil whatever. We're going to talk about whatever we want. So if you don't like that, please go watch the episode and then come back and comment, like, subscribe, share. But I really appreciated the fact that her presence was rife through the episode.
Yeah. I guess I'll begin. So
Please.
this episode starts with
you paid
Sheriff
$20, you better.
Sheriff Tillman going to a strip club called the Tender Trap, which is also the name of the episode, to confront Vivian Duggar, the banker from last week, who criticized Lorraine by calling her "Hey, lady," and he basically intimidates him by cutting off his coat and his jacket, and
takes the shirt off his back,
literally, and says, "You will not return her calls. You will not accept her buyout. You will do no business with her whatsoever." And he's like, "Come on, Roy, you can't do this shit anymore because I'm connected with the government." And Roy just basically intimidates him down from that. And because Vivian's kind of a coward, he just sort of accepts it. And the sheriff wanders off.
he threatens fairly fiercely.
He does.
Like, doesn't he say, like, your family?
Yeah, he does double down on it. But again, because this guy I didn't mean just backs down in that scene. He doesn't, like, do anything. If you have government friends, maybe you should try and use them to do something to the sheriff. But as we see in the rest of the episode, it doesn't seem like he does anything. He just backs down and accepts it. Yeah.
Well, oh my God. But Kat, remember how last week you were saying that we hadn't seen Roy Tillman kill a man?
Right.
I got to see what it's like to be killed by Roy Tillman in this episode.
Yes, we continue by having the next morning, Roy's back at the house and his wife's trimming his hair in the kitchen. And the girls are sitting down. They were like, "We want to watch cartoons." He's like, "No, I don't want you to be a bunch of, welfare babies or whatever." As they're watching.
Yeah, don't talk back to your mother.
Don't want this house full of welfare kids, or welfare queens, as he calls it. And
yes,
they're watching Fox News, and Trump's giving the speech against the idea of impeachment. And the wife, Karen, is like, again, aptly named Karen, a bit heavy-handed. And she's like, "Oh, that's such a great man. I don't understand why they're, complaining about blah, blah, blah." And once the girls say they wanted to watch cartoons, Roy kind of turns ever so slightly, and she accidentally clips his ear. And he's like, "Ah!" She's like, "Oh, sorry, I don't know what happened." And he immediately stands up and just slaps her across the face for taking what he claims to be his mother's napkins to try and help him. It's like, really? That's your excuse? He then goes outside because Gator is there, and Gator's like, "We've been interrogating this guy, and he insists he's not him, but well, he got shocked, so maybe he's got a little amnesia or whatever." And before the sheriff walks out, he sees a commercial. Or that's what prompted him to turn his head and get his ear cut in the first place. He saw Wayne Lyon, his car dealership commercial for Kia. And so now he realizes that, I guess cars? Huh? His recognition must mean that he must have seen the hostage previously, because otherwise there's no reason for him to react that way. So he goes outside to the barn or the shed where they're torturing the guy. He's like, "I'm just a cancer patient. I'm nobody. You got the wrong guy." They're beating the shit out of him. And the fact that Gator says, "Oh, he's taking it." He's like, "I thought you said this guy was soft." He's like, eh. And so the sheriff suspects, and looks at him, and he says, basically, "That's not the guy." And then Gator decides to back down. He's like, "Hey, man, I stayed in the car. Bowman is the one who did it." So the sheriff looks to Bowman, and he's like, "Well, the name was on the door, which is another Nightmare Before Christmas reference that I absolutely love. And this whole scene is a Nightmare Before Christmas because the Boogie Boys accidentally kidnapped the Easter Bunny because they didn't go through the door shaped like a Christmas tree, but through the one shaped like an Easter egg." And so the sheriff's upset about this, and he's like, "Gator, I thought you saw this guy." He's like, "Well, it was dark," and blah, 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 being a wuss. And so then the sheriff just is like, "Fuck this." And unlike Jack Skellington, who told the Boogie Boys to just take the Easter Bunny home and apologize and come back with Santa Claus, Sheriff Roy just whips out his gun and just shoots this guy dead. Well,
at that point, come on. Like, what else are you going to do with the guy?
Well, I know he didn't really have another option.
He's been kidnapped, he's been beaten, and he is tied to a chair. At this point, unless he's done anything wrong, you're releasing a witness. And
Yeah, no,
so
that's why he
Roy
did it.
Tillman, yeah, exactly. That's why Roy Tillman, it's hard man for hard times, Cat.
But make no mistake when he says when he does that, despite the allusion to Nightmare Before Christmas, he is not the Jack Skellington in this story. But he does mention now we're going to go see the Boogeyman, and it's like, ooh, what's he talking about now? Because I remember where that goes in the story of Nightmare Before Christmas.
I don't. I still haven't seen it.
Yeah. So meanwhile, we cut back to Indira's house.
That was
And
easy. I thought you'd get mad. You're just like, okay with
no,
it. Scott
because you
hasn't
don't
seen it.
necessarily
All
have
right.
to see it. I don't think this is whether you pick up on the references or not.
Okay.
And so back at Indira's house, she's going to leave for the day to go to work, tells Scotty to go in the other living room while her husband comes in there. And this was the scene I thought was most heavy-handed in the episode because he goes on and on about, oh, my needs, emotional, sexual, all this crap, and how much, and he's clearly a deadbeat, and he just wants her to be, oh, you should do the cooking and the cleaning, all this crap, and he's clearly not doing anything because he's such a deadbeat. And it was heavy-handed, not just because they're laying it on thick, but because it got to the point where I just didn't believe these two people would have ever gotten married in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, I don't believe, like, this guy is not somebody who got hit on the head and is now an idiot. Like, he's clearly been this way forever, and I don't know.
Well,
I can't for a second imagine. And she certainly didn't marry him for any money because he didn't have any money. And when she mentioned,
I want to interject something because, I go on the Facebook marketplace in my locale. I'm usually looking for used DVDs because I like getting bundles of DVDs. It's one of my favorite things. But sometimes I come across other confectionaries that are available to purchase. And one of them that I saw was the driving range screen. And it was like $300. And it's like, they're making this video game out to be very, very expensive and frivolous, but it's not. It's only like, at least where I saw. You want to buy a used golf club simulator? It's $300.
yeah, that's something.
So, and that's the thing. And this is what I mean. Like, I think that they do lay a little, spread some of the politics a little thick in this episode. Like when Trump is on screen, like, don't you think that now, I don't know, maybe it's me, maybe I'm sensitive, but whenever you see Trump on screen, you sort of assume it's going to be a punchline.
Yeah, if it's late night television.
No, but even like if you're watching, I don't know, let's say weekly television, in a television show that is highlighting, like, what is it in The Big Lebowski? He writes a check on September 11th, and that's supposed to mean something. Like there is references to the Gulf War, the first one. And it's like supposed to mean something.
Was before, because Big Lebowski was before 9/11.
Yeah, exactly. And so like there are things, and I want to impress more Coen brothers aesthetic or philosophy or style onto the show than it deserves.
Well, they did. It's funny you mentioned that because season 3 also had allusions to the Trump era in terms of, like, one thing they do at the beginning of every episode when it says this is a true story, the word true fades out and it just says this is a story. And they deal with elements of truth and fake truths and the fact that the villain's got these Russian henchmen because it was 2017 and started all that kind of thing. But they did it in a much more subtle, tasteful way. And he did mention at the start, the showrunner Noah Hawley said this season was deliberately leaning into the more absurd. Like it's leaning into cartoonish and absurd and comedy. Because season 4, while I didn't watch the whole thing, one of the main big criticisms, aside from being set in Kansas City and away from a lot of the Minnesota Nice, was that it had a much more serious tone at times. And that's why it's, in a sense, they're overcompensating. Like they're making it a bit cartoonish, but at the same time, it's not. There is a right-wing, don't tread on me type militia not far from me, like 10 miles from me. Just last week, the super ultra-conservative members on the school board had a meeting because they wanted to eliminate the words diversity and inclusiveness from the mission statement. Not proposing any changes to any curriculum. They just got so triggered by those words being in the mission statement that they wanted to host this big meeting and have votes on it. And it's like, this is the same school board which mismanaged funds so badly they had to eliminate school bus service. which is something the kids are dependent on, but they're getting more worked up about those types of words in the so these types of people exist. They're out there. I remember my friend invited me to go last week, and I said, no, I would have compared them to the Taliban, who are currently more concerned about enforcing archaic religious law than they are about feeding the people or meeting the basic needs. And that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from the vibe I got from the school board thing last week. And so, yes, it is cartoonish. We see it in the show, but it does exist. Like across the river, there's plenty of places that are still fighting the Civil War. And so, sundown towns, if you will, because I'm up in the whole, near the whole, state of Jefferson division, like way out in that type of, area of California. So yeah, I could see why other people would find it really, okay, this is obviously not the whole of conservatism, clearly, but it's a pocket of it. And this show is just putting that front and center because they wanted to lean into absurd, because admittedly you can get a lot of good humor out of it. Like you said, you can get a good punchline out of it. And
well, first things first, hang on. I just want to say hello to Flyboy. Hey, we're Herc 130. He says, and I apologize for assuming your gender. Hey, I was in the first Gulf War too. Go figure. Small world. Well, yeah, I guess. And you know what? I hope you wore sunscreen, sir. But also, like, it just seems like, I don't know, Hollywood shorthand. If you want to define a negative character, make them a Trump supporter. And I think that there are plenty of reasons to disagree with Roy Tillman.
Well, but they didn't bring that up until
I think, come on, sitting around with your kids watching Fox News.
Well, the kids are eating and he's just watching TV because the kitchen,
I guess. I don't know. I felt like it was kind of a little poke in the ribs.
But they didn't start out with that. They've already established his character and everything he's about in the first 5. And also, they did make it clear in the earlier episodes that he's not fully into this. Like he is only in so far that he can run his own little fiefdom. Like he rolled his eyes behind his father-in-law's back, because his father-in-law is totally all in on this.
Yeah.
And Roy's not.
And they do say, like, this FBI says that, like, they've taken out like mucho dinero.
Yeah. He's embezzled
like $100 million? $1 million? How many?
Yeah, $1 million to buy tactical weapons to give to his father-in-law's militias.
Yeah.
Which is just Roy, keeping him happy kind of thing, because Roy obviously doesn't think that they're ever going to do anything about it. And so, because he's running his own little fiefdom, and that's what he wants to do. But his character, I felt, was already firmly established in the first 5 episodes, because they didn't bring this up specifically until episode 6. Whereas if it was more low-hanging fruit, I think they would have done it right off the bat in the first episode, but they didn't.
Can I just say, like, again, when it comes to watching Fargo, I've, like, the television show, I've only seen the first season.
Yeah.
And now watching the 5th, I really want the FBI agents to be Carrie Bradshaw and the other guy from Portlandia.
Fred Armisen?
That's him. Like, I wish the FBI agents were more engaging as actors. They're just plain. They're not doing anything wrong, but for Fargo, I don't know. Did they spend all their money on John Hamm and Jennifer Jason Leigh?
Maybe. And all Dave Foley.
And Dave Foley. Dave Foley costs a pretty penny.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I recognize him. But yeah, well, the FBI agents aren't really in much of it. So
no, but I just wish it was Fred Armisen and Carrie Bradshaw.
Yeah, and so
not Carrie Bradshaw. What is that her name for Portlandia? I feel like I'm saying the lady from Sex and the City.
I haven't seen Portlandia, so I don't know who's in it.
You've never seen Portlandia?
It's like a streaming show, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on TV. You can catch it
out. There's so much stuff it's hard to hear about it these days.
Yeah.
So Roy kills the guy and he just says, "Come on, we're gonna go see the boogeyman." Yeah. And he keeps, Gator keeps telling his dad, "Don't worry, I'm a winner. I could do this." And as we see, Indira just listens to everything her husband says. And again, I thought they were laying it on real thick, because it's like you're at the point where it's not believable that you two ever would have gotten together. but she still thinks it's a good idea to leave Scotty there alone and won't let her go to school because she's technically not, she's not supposed to be there. And you had that funny thing where the garage door opened because she was getting ready to leave and he fell asleep in there. And so all the kids on the school bus passing by are laughing at him because he's in his boxers. And that's kind of what upset him. And so from there, we go back to meet up with the sheriff. They didn't say how they found Olay, did they? I didn't catch how they initiated contact to be able to bring him back to the ranch. Like, he just kind of shows up there and Gator's like, why are we doing this, Dad? And he's like, we're a few days from the election and, we can't risk this and we need to get this down. You guys obviously can't get it done. So we're going to, pay the devil, which is him going to the boogeyman as he sees it, much like, again, Nightmare Before Christmas.
I feel like there's a conversation that is like, we have to find him and it's like, we don't need him. It's almost like a bounty hunters. We don't need their scum. And then all of a sudden he's back and they say that it was, it's sort of dialogue. It's dialogue. There's no action. There's nothing on screen. It's just like, we should get the golem, and then the golem arrives.
Yeah, so Olay's there, and the sheriff is, trying to pepper it over. He agrees he's going to pay him the money for the pain and suffering and for the job, even though he didn't finish it. He says he's going to hire him to finish the job, and Olay accepts, but Olay's kind of not, like, sort of half listening to him, and he starts prophesizing that neither of them have very long to live, and he seems kind of okay with that, and Gator's just kind of sheepishly standing by, and so when Olay goes to take the bags of money to load in the car, Gator's like, oh, you killed some really good men, some fine men. You're breathing the air that they should be breathing, and you're just a trash who's been doing that. You don't deserve that, blah, blah, blah. And Olay doesn't bother engaging with him on it. He just, basically tells off and gets in the car. But we see that Gator put a tracker on the car and he switches it on.
I was watching the episode with my mom and I was like, oh, is that a bomb? And
I thought so too. I thought it was going to be a bomb.
And my mom was like, are you an idiot? They said it was a tracker. Like, fucking keep up.
At first, I thought it was going to end up being a bomb anyway.
Well, I'm glad that my mom thinks you're as dumb as I am.
Yeah, so Olay takes off to go find Dot. And meanwhile, we cut back to the hospital. And Indira goes there to find that the two FBI agents are interviewing Wayne. And they're telling him, and she finds out that somebody's been kidnapped from the hospital, another patient. And she sees that the rooms have been mixed up, so she figures out what happened. She goes downstairs to meet the FBI, and they've just told Wayne that your wife was previously married. He's got this kind of ditzy lawyer friend there with him. And Wayne is having a hard time understanding all this. He's not able to provide any vital information. And
but Wayne is still suffering from the quite realistic repercussions of being incredibly electrocuted.
Exactly. That's why he's not able to help. But when Indira comes in...
I thought my wife's name was Dorothy, but now you're telling me that it's Nadine? I don't know. Can I go home? Oh, no. They told me it was burnt to the ground. Yeah, oh, my God. Wayne is... Didn't I tell you Wayne was going to be in a bad place?
Yeah, we haven't gotten to the worst parts of it yet, but...
Not yet.
But that was good. And then... So Indira shows up and... she proposes like a pact with the cops, says, look, I'll help you with your problem. Like, what's the issue? And they said, well, Roy, it took $1 million of taxpayer funds to buy technical weapons that he gave to his father-in-law's militias. And they're like, well, I'll help you. And because they want to use Dot as like a way in to figure out what's going on. And Indira says, well, I'll help you so long as you don't, put the blame on Dot. She's the victim in this. And we're going to, put it that way. And so the feds kind of agree and they ask her, so we heard that Sheriff Tillman was at the Lyon residence while you were there. Why was he there? And she's like, well, I'm guessing he was looking for Dot. And so now they're realizing even more so that the sheriff is still up to his wicked ways. And so they agreed to that pact. Okay, we're not going to pursue Dot, like hit her up with any charges or anything. And in exchange, you help us with this. And she's like, okay. Meanwhile, back at the house, Lorraine is there and she tells talks to Danish, and he's like, yeah, they don't want to. The bankers don't want to deal with this anymore. They don't want to sell. And she's smart and immediately puts 2 and 2 together that the sheriff got to them. And so she's like, come on, we got to get my Porsche and we have to go driving. He's like, where are we going? She's like, we're going to go steal an election because she knows the election is coming up for the sheriff and she's not going to let him win because now she's really pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
well, and also I really appreciate the fact that it was a man at the beginning of the episode that was completely like taken down a peg for his indiscretion by his moral, or at least that's what Roy thinks, superior, and absolutely taken down for being a fuckwit. And then at the end of the episode, Mrs. Lyon, with her giant no mural, says, why are you afraid of him?
Yeah.
I'm the one you should be afraid of.
And, so, and they didn't show where she went with the Porsche. She just says, we're going to go steal an election, and she drives off. Meanwhile, we cut back to Indira, and she gets home to find that Lars is gone because Scotty went in the garage and said, I'm bored. And Lars just didn't really care. And so he just took off to go wherever he went. And so Indira comes back to find Scotty alone playing the drums. And she's like, oh, yeah, that was one of his other dreams, to be a rock star. And he gave up on that. And you see all these Imagine Dragons posters there in the corner with the drums.
Oh, wait, but that's okay. I want to talk about Lars and Scotty and the drums, but she doesn't get home until like, what's her name? Jennifer Jason Leigh?
Lorraine
says to Indira and says, I want to hire you. I will take you. I will take you out.
No. That's not, because she only talks to her because she brings the granddaughter back.
Oh, fair enough. Good point.
Yeah, that was before.
Sorry, so I'm ahead of myself.
Indira came home and found that Lars left her there. She's like, well, when did you last have something to eat? And she's like, I foraged for whatever it was she said. I couldn't understand her. The accent was a bit thick. But she's like, oh, yeah, Lars left to some physical therapy thing, and he's been gone for like an hour. Did you bring home dinner? And she's like totally fed up with it. She's like, come on, we're going. She's like, where are we going? To Grandma's house. So they drive back to Lorraine's estate, and
I was shocked by that.
Yeah, because I think she realized that obviously with Lars being as irresponsible as he is, and with her having to keep her job to not arouse suspicion, she can't keep this kid here anymore. It's like, no, this like the compound obviously is a safer place than Indira's house because you can't trust that Lars isn't going to do something stupid. And
well, can I ask you a question? And it comes up. I hang out in weird circles on the internet, but like, and again, I think that this episode could be viewed as like laying on the political or the sociological a little thick. And I'm wondering, is Lars just a representation of the worst person? And like, is it because he's like a white golfer? Like, what is like? Why? There's something about that, and I'm asking. I'm not. I don't think
it's because he's. Well, one, I say the sheriff is worse because he's actually abusive, whereas Lars is not.
Yeah. Well, no, Lars is abusive. He's been sitting there saying like, "Hey,
he's not abusive in the sense that he doesn't beat her and stuff. Mercilessly.
Yeah, he doesn't punch. No punching.
I don't think it's because he's a golfer. I think they picked golf because given where they live, Minnesota, and the snow and North Dakota and all that, almost for most of the year, it's like. Clearly your dream to become a pro golfer in Minnesota, like that's not something you don't hear of major pro golfers necessarily coming out of Minnesota. If you want to be a pro golfer, you got to practice a lot, like year round and stuff. And he's clearly never going to be able to do that. So they just picked a dream for him, which was completely unrealistic given the geographic area that he lives. And I don't think it's necessarily because it's golf. Otherwise,
Lemon Pie has the correct answer. She ate some crackers.
So I don't think it's the golf thing. But we saw it also with the other guy.
You don't think golf is distinctly Caucasian?
No, but I'm saying if they were going to do that, then they would have it be like a white collar. Like instead of the banker coming out of a strip club, he would have been at like a golf, a country club or something like that if they really wanted to lay it on thick.
Yeah.
Okay. But they haven't done that. So with Lars, it felt like such a fish out of water thing. Like, you want to be a pro golfer, and yet because the story started at Halloween time, and he's like, the next time that he can actually golf for real is not until like the spring in April or something that he mentions. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not going to be a pro golfer if you can only golf for less than half a year. It's like, it's not going to happen. So I picked that.
Well,
but then we saw another character
simulator so that he could practice when it wasn't good weather.
That's not the same thing. Right. We then saw the other character earlier in the season, the one who was actually beating his wife.
Yes. Which one?
So they're leaning in that direction. But again, as I mentioned, with the people around this area, it's not an entirely unrealistic thing. It does exist. And because the show is like Noah Hawley said, we're going to lean into the more absurdly comic this season. So they're deciding to put it in that direction. And none of the other seasons have really done that yet.
I have limited understanding of Fargo. Like, at this point, at episode 6, I'm saying season 1 is better than this.
Okay, yeah, in terms of characters, like this one is mostly, this one has so many plot twists that it's not following the typical Fargo structure where you build the characters out, develop them properly, and then the 6th episode is usually where the shit hits the fan, and then your stuff starts changing and you build up again to the climax. That's usually what the other seasons do. This one's not doing that. This is just, like you said, it's absurdist, it's comedy, it's ridiculous plot twists. All sorts of crazy stuff is happening that makes it really fun to watch, but it's not as much depth as for the characters as much as we had in other seasons.
Well, and every 5 minutes, I'm thinking about what's it called? The Nightmare Before Christmas. I got to do that. But I am enjoying it. Like, I'm enjoying it. I obviously John Hamm. I think that it is, as you mentioned at the beginning, and as you've mentioned throughout this particular broadcast, is that it is leaning towards the absurdist as opposed to the slow tension that I would expect from a Fargo story. If you have a season-long arc that you can do one story with, I would expect you to sort of get to know the characters and go, and then crescendo. Like bigger things will happen later on.
That's why I theorize, like I mentioned earlier, that this season is deliberately overcompensating for the criticism of season 4 being just way too serious and slower paced.
But I like that.
Right.
And it's that slower pace when I get to see Lou at the diner.
No. The difference is season 1 has a very small ensemble, and there's a few characters you follow who have really great characters. Season 4 has 2 full-fledged crime families with all sorts of people, a bunch of criminals on this side, a bunch of cops. There's so many main characters. The first 2 episodes felt almost like they got just enough done to introduce everybody before actually telling the story, and that's part of why I wasn't as intrigued to continue it at the time. And so that's why the story was a lot slower, because you had to deal with so many other characters. Whereas here, it's like, yes, there's a lot of characters, but they're not putting as much depth. They're trying to make it humorous and, plot twists aplenty.
Yeah. Well, and I love all of the actors who are doing their jobs, except for the FBI agents, who I think should be Phil Armisen and Carrie Bradshaw. But
Brett Armisen.
Yeah. And that's what I said. But like, I do feel like it's not that sort of, there's no stop to pause to have the weird conversation at the diner or at the restaurant. Like, I'm kind of comparing it to the movie.
Yeah, like there's no Mike Nikita scene.
Yeah, or yet. Like
when Wrench and Numbers were at the diner in season 1, and they started talking about people who eat or talk at breakfast, and Mormon's like, what? Like, you don't have that type of humor in this one. This is a much more plot-driven story than it is a character-driven story.
And I think that the season so far has been built on what do you get when you get a Minnesota housewife who ends up being the long kiss goodnight, and whatever. And then you have an episode without her doing that, and we don't find out anything about her. People are asking about her, which is great, but it's not like as tense and exciting as this episode was, didn't do anything. It was kind of a filler.
Oh, I haven't finished talking about it yet. We're almost at the end.
Yeah, it's true.
So Indira resolves to just take Scotty back to her grandma's house. She does, and she's like, "Hey, look who I found!" Talking to the bodyguard, and Scotty runs in and reunites with her father, and it's really sweet. And it seems like Lorraine was almost kind of impressed by this, or kind of moved by it. She's like, "Okay, you can come in here," and she invites her into the office, and she's not like the first thing Indira does is kind of apologize. She's like, "No, don't apologize." It's like Lorraine tells her not to apologize. It's like having a welcome mat printed on your forehead. Oh, hello, Cam. Nice to see you.
And hello to DJ Play Nice.
And so Indira doesn't.
Who said very eloquently, he said, Kat, can you read this?
Wee.
That's exactly what he said.
So
I don't know if DJ Play Nice is a boy or a girl.
So Indira doesn't want to get dragged into another insulting conversation with her, so she just slams Dot's file down on the table, saying, "Look, you could be an asshole, or you could just be an educated asshole about here's the Dot's file about everything Roy did to her, how abusive and all that kind of stuff." And she's like, "Well, I don't really want to look at that." And then she says, "Well, you know what? I think we have a lot more in common, you and I, than you think." And she's like, "Yeah, we both get up every day, get up before the crack of dawn, give 100% for our jobs and that kind of thing." And she's like, "And you don't want to admit it, but she's like, you and Dot have a lot in common too." And she's kind of incredulous at this. Lorraine's like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And she's like, "Well, she's managed to escape 2 kidnappings, kill one of the kidnappers, nearly kill another one, save her family from a massive house fire and a bunch of other guys breaking into the house, and been able to evade getting out of you locking her up in a psych ward. She's able to save her husband from being kidnapped, save her daughter potentially being kidnapped briefly." And it's like all of this, and she doesn't complain a bit like you, not even when you locked her in a psych ward. And she's fighting tooth and nail this whole time and has outsmarted everybody. So maybe you should just, educate yourself a bit instead of being a total bitch. And Lorraine is actually impressed by this. She's not insulted by it. And so that's when Lorraine offers her a job. She's like,
"Oh, hang on a second. Hang on one moment."
What? That's exactly what happened.
Lorraine did not offer her a job.
She did.
That is what she did. That is, if you
wasn't finished.
If you would like to judge a gift by the bow on the box, then that's exactly what she did. But
I wasn't finished.
Oh well, please.
She says, continue. "I'll offer you." The way she phrases it at first is like, "I'll offer you a job. You could run the security team." And she's like, because she says her security is not impressive. They're bumbling idiots. She's like, "Oh, you want me just to be your window dressing?" She's like, "No, I want you to run this security team and run the ones that go around the world to do all the work for me. I know you're in debt, and I can consolidate that and make it go away, and it'll be great. And you're not going to have, look, everything you just said about how everything you give 100% and everything, and look at the uniform they make you wear. Like you don't, like, yeah, you have a badge.
Look how you're dressed.
Yeah, look how you're dressed. Like, don't you want to be respected in the same kind of way?"
Exactly. You could be wearing good clothes.
Realizes that she does have a point, and she takes a step back to think about it, but she doesn't want to bite the bullet immediately and says, "Well, I need to think about it first." And Lorraine's like, "Well, this offer expires in 24 hours. That's how the real world works."
Agreed.
So we'll give you 24 hours to think about it. And she clearly is taking that thought seriously. And I'm guessing
she is.
And I'm guessing she's going to get in another fight with her husband when she gets home over the fact that he left Scotty there alone, which is probably I'm predicting that's going to cause her to agree to take the job.
Are we allowed to wish for fictional characters to die? Because I kind of want Lars to get shot in the face.
He might. Or better, get hit with one of his 9-irons.
Oh, that would be awesome if he died, if he was hoisted by his own petard.
Yes. So Indira leaves, and then Lorraine decides to finish the last blow against the banker, Vivian Duggar, who wasn't returning her calls. And so she sends her lawyer Danish over to the strip club, and Vivian's surprised to see him suddenly just there in the private room of the stripper, and he, gives the stripper the money to leave, and then he's like, Lorraine's on the line for you. Well, of course, yeah. Lorraine is offering
Lemon
that.
Pie in the chat says, of course, Lorraine is offering this to simply have control over Indira and remove her as an obstacle to her own plans. Yes, I agree with that, Lemon Pie, but I also want to add on to this, and I would like to think, as Lorraine would, is that why would I dispose of such a valuable asset? Why not entice them onto my advantage, as
Right,
opposed to casting them aside?
because Indira hasn't really been an obstacle. I mean, yeah, she kind of annoyed her, but she wasn't really blocking anything that Lorraine wanted to do. And she just brought her granddaughter back home, who Lorraine is quite fond of, at the very least.
Well,
And
and the cinematography, there is like in this episode, there is sort of cinematography that frames Lorraine as being she sympathetic to her son, which is something that we had not seen hitherto for until this episode. And like this episode seems to be wanting to humanize Lorraine. She's sort of connecting with more people.
I think that Lemon Pie is still onto something where he says that she sees her as an asset, like you did. Get rid of the obstacle, control this asset who's going to help you down the road. Even though, because she's looking, because that's exactly how she's framing it. She's like, oh, I'm going to put you in charge of the security team because I can see you're competent and can do the job correctly. And in exchange, her consolidating your debt isn't much of an offer anyway, because that's what Lorraine does for a living. So it's not like it's her, having to go out of her way to help her.
Oh,
really.
That reminds me, Kat.
What?
I have to write down about debt consolidation franchise. Get into debt business. Not get into debt, but debt business. Apparently, it's very profitable. That's what Jennifer Jason Leigh taught.
Yes, and that's what Lorraine tells Vivian over the phone when Danish brings the cell phone saying, Lorraine's on the phone for you while they're in the strip club. And she says, I got the SEC to look into how badly you've mismanaged your bank funds, and they're freezing all your accounts, which means your sons are going to get expelled from college because he can't pay anymore. And you are going to be hassled with so much debt now for what you've done, and be done in the banking world entirely once they find all the evidence of your mismanagements, that you are going to be living under crushing debt for the rest of your lives, and your kids will too.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And Merry Christmas. And then Danish is just like, thanks for doing business. Like it's
normal. Know what? I was really kind of upset about one thing. Is that there was, during that entire I will threaten you with all of your financial insecurity, and she does so successfully. But she says during that call, that call on the other line, that's your son finding out that he was just expelled. And the problem with that line, and this is just mechanics, is that it's Turkish Graves.
Danish.
Whatever, same fucking thing. It's Danish Graves who gives the phone and then brings it back. So there would be no call waiting on that phone. That would be his son calling him. If there was a way that they had manipulated his phone, I would have bought it. But like that mechanic of that scene, it seems menacing. But when you think about it, it's like, why would your phone? Why would my son have your phone number? So it doesn't make sense.
Well,
and while it's intimidating, it doesn't make a fucking lick of sense. It kind of
makes sense to me because the implication of it is that because he obviously wouldn't get kicked out that fast unless Lorraine's been working on this for a little while. So,
or if she's that powerful.
And plus, if she knows this banker, it wouldn't be hard to find the guy's phone number. So I think she made the call herself, reported it once they got expelled, and made sure to get his wife on the phone just to to piss him off even more.
Is he married? That guy who goes to the
or whoever it is, because he has his sons, whoever was on the other line, or the school, or whoever it was.
I'm just saying the whole other line comment was a writer who was sort of trying to drop a microphone, but when you think about the construction,
that's why I'm saying that I think
it doesn't work.
That's why I'm saying she thinks she arranged for the call to already be coming in because she really wants to
on her phone.
What he did? Well, yeah, why not? He
Why
brings the
would she
phone
want
there.
her to call him? Or why would she want anybody to call her on that phone? It's probably a burner phone.
Yeah, which is why it's not a big deal. The guy can call, he could talk and find out that his sons are kicked out, and then Danish takes it back and says, "Nice for doing business with me."
Well, you're more forgiving than I am.
Like he's trolling him, like it's the ultimate troll. And the whole episode, we still don't know where Dot is, but Lorraine finally, at the end of that call, opens the file and starts glancing at it, and we don't really get too much of an impression of what
I got an impression.
What do you think she's thinking?
Well, I think Jennifer Jason Leigh is going to be, like, Lorraine is going to be a sympathetic character at the end. I still stand by. There's going to be a gunfight at Lorraine's house. And I think that they're softening Lorraine to understand Dot. The efforts that Lorraine has gone through to claw her way to a giant mural behind her desk that says no. Dot has done. Nadine did that. And so I think this is going to be a girl power season. And I'm fine with that. I love the Spice Girls, especially if they're from Fargo.
Yes, it's interesting because it's like, what's Dot been up to? Because she made it sound like she was going to do something very specific, and I'll be back. And it's like,
oh man,
like, I don't know what she's up to. I'm not sure what will come.
You know what it gets me excited for? And this is the power of the character and the performance that we've seen so far. Is that what if the next episode? Okay, so this episode, we got Dave Foley, John Hamm, the guy from Stranger Things, Jennifer Jason Leigh. Like, we didn't get Wit.
No, we didn't. So the FBI
and
agent,
we got Indira, we got Scotty, we got Wayne, like everybody else. I would adore it if next week we just have a Dot episode and it's only her.
I'm wondering, I thought that Wit was going to be a bigger character in the show, but we're like, he wasn't in this episode. He's barely been in much of it, and he hasn't really done much to help the investigation. So
I think he's going to be like the guardian angel. He's going to show up at the end to be like, I know her and she's a good person. I think that's what his role is.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. And the FBI agents, I think, are only there for the purpose of exposition.
Yeah, that's why I wish that they were played by more entertaining performers.
And that's why I think eventually we'll find out at some point what Roy meant when he said, we took her in 2005, 2 years before he married Dot. So it's like, what's that about? Because we still don't. And I'm wondering if, because she's been gone, if they're going to do, will next week's episode just cover what she was doing, or will it be like she'll be back and they'll keep it? No, I'm wondering if she'll just be back and they're not going to tell us what she was doing, and that'll become another mystery for a bit.
What if we get an episode that is how Nadine fell in love with Roy, got married, and beat up?
Do we think she was in love with him, though? Or do we think maybe she
married him?
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean she wanted to. I mean...
So now you're like looking down your nose upon the concept of marriage.
No, I'm saying that maybe she didn't want to marry. Like, he says he took her in. And it's like, well, what exactly does that mean? So did he try and leverage that to say, you should marry me and be my wife because I like you, or whatever? It's like, we don't really know.
You don't think she wanted to get married to Roy?
Maybe.
But it's John Hamm, Kat.
It's not. It's Roy Tillman.
He's very handsome.
It's
of course he's racist.
Not with those rings. It is, yes, Roy Tillman, though, as opposed to John Hamm.
Yeah, I want to differentiate. I'm using them synonymously.
Yeah.
Whatever. I'm not going to correct my enunciation. I may have had a few Chardonnays. What of it?
I'm thinking, given how much they've been alluding to The Nightmare Before Christmas, because I'm still not sold on, because clearly, even though Roy sort of filled the Jack Skellington role a little bit in the beginning, Gator is the more appropriate one because he's not cut out for what his dad wants him to be. Like, he's still willing to do bad things, but I get the sense that he's doing that just to impress his dad, and because he has his own self-confidence, because his dad is constantly breathing down his neck and trying to, oh, you need to be better and tougher, son, that kind of thing.
I really can't wait. I can't wait for the Welsh guy to kill him.
I don't know. It might be the other way around, because I'm thinking if the Welsh guy has now been identified as the boogeyman, and I'm thinking about what the boogeyman's role was in The Nightmare Before Christmas, and how he and Jack Skellington had their showdown of sorts, and I'm wondering, and the fact that Dot is more or less Santa Claus, and this, like, he wants Dot back. Anything, by any means, go kidnap her, that kind of thing. Like Jack said, to go kidnap Santa Claus. And I'm thinking how that goes. So I'm thinking it's not just going to be a matter of Dot surviving and outsmarting people. I think Dot is ultimately going to be the one who will figure out how to triumph over them. Yes, she'll have help, but I think it's going to be her pulling the rabbit out of the hat, if you will, by the time we get to the end of the season.
Oh, for sure. She's the John McClane of this season.
Yeah. And it's funny because Noah Hawley did, get Tim Burton's permission to reference The Nightmare Before Christmas, because like I mentioned, it is in this whole thing's in the Disney wheelhouse anyway, because it's Nightmare Before Christmas was a Touchstone film, which is owned by Disney, and FX is now part of the Fox Entertainment division owned by Disney. So he didn't need to get permission, but he was nice and asked for it anyway. And so we've seen how those motifs have been carrying over, but you don't really miss too much if you haven't seen it, so it's not like a big deal. It's just like it's there if you've seen it. It's sort of like if you watch the seasons out of order, it's like, oh, you might see a character pop up who you haven't seen in a previous season, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
because you'll still.
I'm waiting for Chris Rock.
Yeah. So I haven't seen the rest of season 4, but there have not been.
Oh wait, Kat.
What?
There's a Fargo season, and it has Chris Rock.
Yeah. What about it?
Well, at the end of it, like spoilers.
Don't spoil it. I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to hear the spoiler.
Well, have you seen it?
No, I told you. I've said it 50 times on this series.
I never listened to you.
I only watched the first 2 episodes of season 4.
My God. So the next season we're doing is going to be the Chris Rock one, right?
Okay, that'll be good because we want to go out on a high note, and that wouldn't be a high note, I don't think. So we'll do that one next. But I was going to say...
What? Shut up. You sound like fucking G.I. Jane.
I'm just going off what the general consensus is, and it seems, like I mentioned, they are, as I've said before a few times, they are overcompensating for the tone.
Like, I'm super jazzed for Kirsten Dunst and all that, but I do want to see the Chris Rock
one. That's a great season. What I was saying is, me having seen the first 3 seasons, there have been no references to the events or characters of those 3 seasons so far in season 5. So maybe something. Good. I doubt to season 4, because season 4 is set in 1950 in Kansas City. Whereas this is 2019 North Dakota, Minnesota. So I don't know.
I know they have like color television.
Yeah. So that'll be something. But see, so this is definitely more
the end of the episode.
Politics and how they deal with the themes. Whereas season 2 is everything 70s in America and did it so well, and the cynicism and the Black Power movement, women's feminist movement, the American Indian movement, UFOs, the government covering up that kind of shit, and just your family businesses being encroached upon by corporations, and just the general cynicism of everybody wanting out of the bullshit 70s and the Jimmy Carter years and the gas crisis, all that kind of shit, and just wanting, just waiting for what comes after. And so that season 2 dealt with it, but on the opposite end of the political spectrum, with plenty of negatives there too. So,
I have questions, and the reason that we have these conversations is because, dude, you are a fucking genius when it comes to film, and you know how to analyze things. And so I have questions. I don't claim to have any answers, but except for when I do. And do you think that these seasons, or the seasons of this television show that you have watched, do you think that they echo the style of the Coen brothers enough to warrant the title of Fargo?
Yeah, because not only do they allude to the Fargo movie, there's plenty of allusions to other Coen Brothers films, not just cheap references like the sign in the restaurant in season 1 that said White Russian. Like
I love that. I love that reference.
Right, but there are also thematic tie-ins and other things that they sort of copy that they do in a tasteful way. This season reminds me of the Coen Brothers film Burn After Reading in terms of the level of absurdity.
Oh yeah.
And certain elements of the Big Lebowski were certainly absurd, and it kind of reminds a little bit of that in terms of just the tone. But and again, they have allusions to the original movie I've seen in the preview that we haven't gotten to that scene yet, but I've seen it in the whole season.
You know
trailer.
what? It kind of reminds me of Intolerable Cruelty.
That's one I actually haven't seen.
I saw it, but that's only because I dated a girl who looked like Catherine Zeta-Jones. And the only reason I think she looked like Catherine Zeta-Jones is because she told me she did. And I was like, I guess. Fake boobs. Oh, no, Kat, can I see you at camera too?
Yeah.
So anyway, I was hanging out with this girl who thought that she looked like Catherine Zeta-Jones, and she wanted to have intimate times with her breasticles, and she was like, "You should F my bees," and I was like, "I don't find that even remotely satisfying for either of us," and she was baffled. It was like if I had played Connect 4, and she said, "Well, I got 3 together," and it's like that's not the game. Anyway. Back to the show, everybody. I know. I love it. I love it when I get to make you shake your head. So, on a scale from 1 to oh brother, where art thou?
Oh, I don't know. We haven't been rating the episodes.
No, we haven't.
What do you consider Oh Brother, Where Art Thou in terms of the scale?
I don't know, like a 6.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I mean,
I like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, but it's about a 6.
Okay, I give the episode maybe like a 7. I don't know. It's hard to tell until I find out what the rest of it's going to be. But
like, I give it about a well. And the thing is that Dorothy's not there. Nadine isn't there, and this has been an adventure of Nadine or Dorothy.
Well,
I want to hear her say. I want to hear her say who she is.
Well, she came.
And I think she already has.
She came close when she told Indira about herself in last week's episode. But this one was more or less like the 4th episode where not much happens. Because there's only those few scenes. Lorraine dealing with the banker, Indira bringing the kid back and having the fight with the husband, and then we're going to give Olay his money and getting rid of the fake, the imposter husband, so to speak. So they didn't do a lot, but that's okay. They move along.
Who do you think is going to die?
I think Olay is right that both he and the sheriff will die and die soon.
That makes sense.
I don't think Gator is going to die. I think he's going to find some type of meaning or redemption at the end of the season.
Yeah.
I don't think Lorraine's going to die either. As much as
what if they kill Turkish?
Danish? Maybe.
Yeah.
Because I'm still trying to figure out, because the real Dave Foley doesn't have an eye patch, but that's just, at least I don't think he does. No. So that's like a character trait they've given Danish, and I wonder if that's ever going to be addressed or if that's just a unique thing they came up with for him.
I think it's just a unique thing. It's kind of like Aldo Rain's rope burn.
Right. That's true. That's a good point. So yeah, I liked the episode. I want Dot and Wayne to come out on top at the end.
You gonna keep watching the show?
Of course, I'm gonna keep watching the show after I've invested so much in it financially.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly. You spent more money on it than anybody. I haven't. You know how many dollars I've spent on Fargo season 5?
I don't know if you should say, unless you say you
zero. The $0.
Well, I'm not a pirate.
I'm not a pirate either. I'm watching it on terrestrial television. I told you this in our first. If you want to go back to the first episode that we recorded, we've been
that's
doing
right.
this
That was the other.
yeah.
That's right. That was the other season. I forgot.
Yeah.
I mean, does the station that it airs on? What station does it air on in Canada?
FX.
Oh, it's still FX. So it has just as many
Yeah.
commercials.
Yeah, I'm living with roommates who are, they're Fox News aficionados, so we get FX for free.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, they like their Trump interviews.
So you have a taste of Fargo.
Yeah. Oh, come on.
Like I do.
One of my favorite things is finding the absurdity of reality in my fiction. So and the reason I bring it up, when John Hamm is getting his haircut, Roy Tillman is getting his haircut and watching Fox News, it's like, what kind of people do that? Like the last time my mom was watching, one of my roommates was watching Fox News, I went in and I turned on Turner Classic Movies instead because I figured it would make everybody happier.
I was on a flight to Chicago, and the guy sitting next to me was watching it, but he was like falling asleep.
Yeah, as you do.
And I'm like, you just want to watch the talking heads bicker while you're stuck on an airplane for 6 hours? I was like, okay.
Yeah, but come on, Kat. The thing is that if there's somebody on an airplane right now, they could be looking at us, and we're just talking heads bickering.
Nobody's going to be watching us on an airplane.
No one's watching us.
I only have 4 people watching. Speaking of which,
hooray! All 4 of us.
Are there any interesting chats?
No.
Or chats?
There are chats. Like interesting. I don't know.
Well, I mean, chats that we could highlight.
Lemon Pie has been very prolific in his chat game. DJ Play Nice is always a pleasure to be. And then Cam's Crash Courses. He's digging tunnels like Charles Bronson in The Great Escape. It is currently 11:10 in the PM, so I'm gonna go and start at 11.
Mm-hmm.
Lemon Pie says she married him for his ham. Cam says, haha. Lemon Pie says, Scotty's F. My B's what does that say? Anecdote. And then I bet it will turn. Oh, so please.
Lemon Pie says, I bet it will turn out Lorraine tossed soup in his eye for screwing up. That's actually not bad. In terms of how Danish Graves doesn't have an eye, or at least not used to that one. Yo, Herc 130. Hey.
Herc 130. And also one of our favorite people in the entire world. Every day he wishes for death, and we all dispute him. Yes. Big shout out to the Phantom Organist. If you live forever, I know it will make you angry. So, good news.
Anybody else we should be thanking in the chat? Or
probably Steve.
Oh, is he in the chat?
No, he's not in the chat. He doesn't watch our shows. Cinema Gulp, we should say big ups to Cinema Gulp. Thank him and go like and subscribe. Anti-Derivative Jill, always a good time. And I don't know, is that it? I feel like I'm forgetting somebody.
Well, everybody, Herc 130, Lemon Pie, Phantom Organist. Did Daniel's Hot Topics show up?
No, not yet, but absolutely big shout out for that guy.
DJ, what'd you say his name was?
DJ Play Nice.
DJ Play Nice. Thanks everybody for being here. If my computer didn't have so many technical difficulties, I would shrink the window, but that takes forever to do. Tim wants down to see it. Otherwise, I would be able to see the chats and engage a bit more directly. But yeah, this has been Fargo season 5, episode 6, and yeah, not the best season, but we're enjoying it.
We are plowing straight through Christmas, so we'll be back next Thursday, and that's going to be like 29th.
What's today? The 20th? No, that would be the 28th.
Okay, fair enough. So it'll be fine. Yeah, no, we're sticking with the show, and so we'll everybody, all four of you who have been here, and if you're listening on the rerun, thank you. Please like, share, and subscribe. But we'll see you next Thursday when we talk about episode 7.
Will do.
Hopefully we'll get some more Dot.
Oh, you betcha.
You know how to work it. Can you do that again? Because I didn't have the end credits.
Well, then you gotta set me up for it.
Okay, so do you think that if you went to a bowling alley and then on your second roll, you would be able to achieve a 7-10 split?
I would obtain a 7-10 split and meet the Rabbi Nachman. You betcha, yeah.